Joining us now on the ESPN 5 Rounds podcast is the former Dream and Strikeforce light heavyweight champion who makes his Bellator debut on Friday night in the main event against Alexander Shlemenko. Bellator 185 airs live Friday at 9 o'clock on Spike TV. Pleasure to be joined by Gegard Mousasi. Hello, Mr. Mousasi. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So you're at ESPN in Bristol right now going through like the car wash of sorts. How's the day been?
Well, today it's media obligation, cutting weight, some photo shoot for Bellator, and making the weight.
Is it a bummer needing to cut weight while doing all of these media questions? People asking you all the same questions, and your mind is focused on cutting weight, and you're depleted. Like, is that a bummer?
Well, I'm not at my happiest, but it's part of the job, and so far so good. It's also a distraction of it's killing time, so it's not bad.
Well, we'll try to make this as painless as possible, Gegard. Thanks again for joining us here. Let's talk about coming to Bellator in the first place. Many people, especially MMA fans, are aware of the drama between yourself and the UFC, wanting the title shot, making the decision to leave the UFC after that win streak and landing in Bellator. What I want to ask first is, when did you know in your heart that you had to leave the UFC?
Well, they made me an offer on fight week, and I knew what other fighters were making. So that wasn't even close to what I felt I should get. And it started there already a little bit. And afterwards, after contract negotiation, I knew all the fighters' numbers. So for me, it was a simple choice to make.
So after you let the UFC know that you will be going elsewhere, was Bellator always the first decision? Did you shop around? What was that process like?
Well, the only competition is the Bellator. The other organizations, they're getting paid or not paid. Those I don't want to worry about that. So with Bellator, I'm safe.
So you land in, so you signed the contract with Bellator, and you've actually said in previous interviews that you have a say in Bellator. There's more freedom. You can ask fighters to get drug tested. You have more say in your career. Is that something that you were very clear about while negotiating with Bellator, that you wanted these freedoms as an established fighter?
Yeah, definitely. I've been working with Scott when I was in Strikeforce. In UFC, you're just a number. There's not much. Even like now, the walkouts, the same Reebok clothes, everything is the same. You're not the individual. But in Bellator, you can you can do not whatever you like, but you can say, I would like to do this for my entrance, or you want to have some sponsors, or a lot of it. You want to move up a weight. You can, it's Bellator works with the fighters. And I think that's the big difference. That's the freedom, the treatment that you get. It's a lot better.
So you are a great example of a fighter who the UFC would have still liked to have on their roster, but you decided to go to Bellator to get better treatment and whatever else. There are other examples as well, Rory McDonald, etc. Do you think that we're going to be seeing a shift? More fighters will decide to come to Bellator because of these freedoms and how the UFC is conducting business?
100%. The problem is when you cannot speak out a lot when you're in the UFC, because let's say you're a fighter, you're trying to make a living, you're not going to suddenly say what's bothering you, because they're probably not going to give you a fight, or they're going to make life difficult for you. So a lot of time you see fighters, when they get a big name, they have like Randy Couture or Tito Ortiz or GSP, then they can speak out. It's a little bit like that. And of course, who doesn't want to have saying what they like in their career?
You mentioned your relationship with Scott Coker going all the way back to Strikeforce. Of course, he's involved. He's the head of Bellator now. What was your relationship like with him during the UFC? Did you guys speak much?
Well, at that moment, not much, but he was keeping a close eye on what I was doing. And so when the time was to negotiate, it was always a pleasant experience. Scott Coker is an honest guy. He delivers, and so it was an easy choice.
So you find yourself now in the main event on Friday night facing Alexander Shlemenko. Give us some thoughts on your opponent. How do you think this fight will unfold?
Well, he's a tough opponent. He's experienced more fights than me, actually. it comes to fight. Whatever is gonna happen, I have a fight on my hands. So I will have to be smart, keep sharp, and But I feel I'm the better guy physically, technically. I'm a more mature as a fighter. He fights the same way. He's more of a brawler. So technically, I should be able to beat him fairly easily, and I should do that. I should be able to do that in 2 rounds.
I know that it's not always a great practice to look beyond your next opponent, but it's hard not to because there's so many thoughts that fill your head when you think of what Gegard Mousasi can do in Bellator. Have you given some thought on what your plan would be in an optimal situation, how you would like to conquer Bellator, so to speak?
Well, first it's Shimlenko, and then it's the belt. Whoever has the belt, they're going to fight on December. So I have to wait on that. Then, you have super fights, Rory McDonald, light heavyweight belt maybe, big names at light heavyweight. I could even fight at the heavyweight. I fought before. I did K1 fights. I even fought Mark Hunt. So it's a possibility. I don't have any problems, as long as as it is a fight that fans like, we can make it.
Would you entertain the possibility of becoming a dual champion? Say you were to win the middleweight championship and an enticing fight happened at a title shot at light heavyweight. Would that be something that you said, you know what, this is happening in the UFC now? We've heard, Conor McGregor is a great example. We've heard fights where people are just jumping weight classes even after winning a championship. Is this something we could possibly see Gegard Mousasi as a double champion in Bellator?
Yeah, 100%. That's the goal. But first, the middleweight belt, and it depends on the matchups. Also, it has to be an exciting fight, I believe, and there should be something on the line for me to go at the light heavyweight. But as I get older, I don't like to cut weight. It's a little bit pain in the ass, so I wouldn't mind going up to light heavyweight.
How many more years would you like to be in the MMA game, Gegard?
Well, I have 6 fights. Once I'm finished, I will be probably around 34. Then I have extensions if I'm champion. So if I do that, I'm looking at 35. So probably that would be a good time to retire. So probably I'm looking at 3 years. But I want to end my career at my best. So my goal is to get the belt, achieve good things, and retire on top.
What do you think in terms of your legacy in mixed martial arts? I mean, you could have stayed in the UFC. You decided, you know what, I want to go and chase this, further my dream and cement my legacy in Bellator. What do you think, when it's all said and done, your legacy will be in mixed martial arts?
Well, I believe I've achieved many belts. I've fought in 3 weight classes. I've been fighting for a long time. So adding maybe the Bellator belts, that would mean a lot. And, like I said, I want to grow with Bellator. That's the opportunity that I get. Young fighters look up to UFC a lot because they see, they look up to the UFC fighters. But as an experienced fighter, you want to have the best deal and the best treatment. And that's where I am. And my goal is to grow with Bellator and make it one of the best organizations.
So last question for you. I mean, Bellator having you on their roster is a huge coup. The fact that Gegard Mousasi, one of the more accomplished fighters of our generation, is on the Bellator roster fighting in the main event immediately, that is a big deal for Bellator. Where do you see the organization as a whole going in the next few years with you among those steering the ship?
Well, I think Scott Coker as the president is first. That's a great thing. You see a lot of big names coming: Roy Nelson, Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, Rory McDonald, Chael Sonnen. You name it. Wanderlei Silva. It doesn't matter if they're on their in their prime or not. Those are big names. So people are gonna have their eyes on Bellator. It's a matter of time because at the end of the day, it's about the fighters and. Once the fighters shift, it's on.
Well, I hope I was your last media obligation today, Gegard. I know that this is very difficult.
No, I enjoy it. No problem. Yeah.
All the best to you on Friday night, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, sir.
So there you have it, another